All right, friends, welcome back to the studio. We are going to make nesting bowls. So our nesting bowls will fit one into the other, and we have the same beautiful design as our nesting mugs. So the bottom will be nice and tapered. This one's just freshly made, so you can kind of get a feel for what that's going to look like. So with that nice taper in the bottom, they will be able to stack one inside of the other. I'm really excited. So this is going to be our regular size, and we will have many bowl sizes, okay? We will have larger sizes, wider sizes, all different combos. But for today, this is our regular size, and I will use the cutter that comes with it. Remember, our cutters will always be 1/4 inch bigger than your jig. So what I have here is a very large, long, double textured piece of clay here that has been sitting up. So if you have seen my nesting mug tutorials, you'll know that I've been working with really wet clay for that. We have a little bit of a different operation with the bowl because it's more clay, there's more surface area, it is much wider. So to avoid any slumping here at the bottom, at this bottom angle, we want our clay to be more set up, okay? So this is still on the softer side. My clay has been sitting out in studio for about 2 hours now. And then I've got my bottom piece cut out, my maker's mark already punched in there, double texture to match the other bowl. And we are ready to rock and roll. So I will have for you a template here, a free template online, but the dimensions of this will be 18.5 by about 3.5. We are going to cut a significant amount off the top, but we want to make sure we start off with plenty. With the template, when you print it out, you'll want to add that extra 1/4 inch onto the clay, and then you will likely have to print 2 of these and then tape them together to get a template this long to print on your normal printer at home. Okay, so I've got my clay here, I've got my jig, we've already got our bottom cut out, and that is setting up. You do want this to be pretty stiff to support the weight. This is a really big bottom, so you want that to set up a little bit longer than our normal projects. So our first step is to take our cornstarch, and we are going to liberally dust this clay. Because of the shape of the nesting bowl, it does really release relatively easy, but you do want to have that insurance, okay? If you've ever gotten your clay stuck on a form or a jig before, you know that it is not fun. So I kind of frost the cake. This always reminds me powdered sugar. I give it a really, really thick coat. It's an organic material, so it burns right off in the kiln. Now, I did have a direction for my pattern, so you'll want to make sure that whatever part of your pattern is facing up is going to want to face you. So we are building this bowl upside down, just like we build the nesting mugs upside down. See how the taper is the bottom of our bowl? We are going to build it upside down with this part against the table. So my top side of my texture has to be facing this bottom part. If your texture is going every which way, then you do not have to sweat that part of the process. So I rock my clay up towards the jig, and we are spot on right there, okay? So there's going to be a lot extra, a couple extra inches above the jig. We need that for our sculpting and when we're using the paddle to bring this in. So what we are going to do is just button up our clay here at the bottom until we come to this first ridge of the jig. So you have this straight side of the jig. We only want to secure that bottom part, and we only want to make sure that's secure once we have the clay completely wrapped around the jig like that, okay? So make sure you're getting this back bottom part nice and smushed up against the jig, and then I am going to take my rib. You can score all the way up. We're gonna actually end up cutting a lot of these pieces off here. So I'm going to score that side, and I'm going to score just past the halfway mark. I use a vinegar slip in my studio, but you can use whichever slip method you're using. So I'm going to take my clay here, and I'm going to tack it with a dry thumb, just enough to bring that bottom seam together, okay? And we don't want to go too far up because we're going to have to bring all of this clay in inward and you're going to have a lot of extra right here by the seam. So that bottom feels nice and secure to me. Now we start the shaping process. I start to bring in the clay over the top of the jig, nice and easy. I tend to start at the back and then work my way forward. And you will get some slack up here in front. That's why we want this top piece to be able to cross, and we want that slack to have a place to go. Now, the minute my clay starts rippling at the top here, you see that top ripple? That's a good indicator that I'm ready to make my first cut to just get some of that extra clay off of there, okay? I'm going to move this project. I put my little guy in upside down. I don't know why I did that. So we're just gonna set our bowl off to the side, and I'm going to remove my banding bat just for now. I'm going to bring this project onto my banding wheel, and we are going to slide that towards ourselves. And then here I can see, now you don't want to take too much off where this crosses, because this piece here will get really close to the rim of the jig there. So I am going to just start here with a little bit, and then I will move deeper into about, I'd say I'm cutting off at least 1/2 inch, right at the bottom of where that ripple is. And I always suggest that you start off slow here. Even that, just for an example, if this, now I'm getting really close to the top of the jig there, so I could have probably taken a little bit less off that corner. And it's just right here where the seam comes together that you have to make sure you don't go too short. So you can always start off with a little, see how I'm right at the top of the jig there, and then you can always take off more. It's a lot easier to just continue to take off more and more clay than it is to add clay on, okay? So as you can see, even just with my hands, I'm able to get that really nice curve in there. Isn't that beautiful? Okay, so at this point, once I've got it really coaxed in, I'm going to come in with my clay paddle, and I'm going to start to just flatten out those sides. And if your clay is set up enough, and if your texture is deep enough, you will not lose a lot of texture here towards the bottom, okay? So, just gonna come around. I'm always working towards that front seam. Now the back feels nice. I'm making nice contact. That's feeling nice and connected back here. I like that. So now it's time to just start cutting off some pieces of our clay here. So I'm going to just come in, I'm gonna open this up a little bit, and I'm just gonna start taking little pie pieces out. Following my same angle, when you make your angled cut to bring your slabs together, you'll wanna follow that same angle. So I took off, I'm gonna show you right here, I'm a little low on this side. So I think what I'm gonna do is, I'm going to release, open up my seam just a little bit, and I'm just gonna, with the warmth of my hands, coax that clay up. This is the beauty of working with clay on the softer side. I can get a little bit of extra height there by just using my hands. See how that brought that up to meet that point. And then I'm going to match my seam on this side. And all I'm doing are cutting off I'm just cutting off these tiny pieces here. This takes practice. I need to take off just a little bit more here. And I'm keeping my angle because I will have to slip and score this. And that's looking really good. Anything extra here, I'm going to take and be able to cut off, or I will even that out in just a second here. So that feels really good for that connection. I'm going to go ahead and come in, slip and score. I am going to add the vinegar slip to the piece of clay that's furthest away from my jig, so I'm not creating a suction there. And then I'm going to take my dry hand and I'm going to bring that seam over. Lovely. Now, once I'm done making this nice and even, I will come and I will address my seam and I will make that angle nice and flat. So now we have full contact. Just keep working it in. It's a bit of sculpting here, and you're going to make sure that all around the bottom, you're not, it's not flimsy. You want to always have contact with the jig. It's a really nice home base for you, so you can feel the shape of it and you can come around. How beautiful is that? So now that we've got the bottom up, we want to make this nice and even so we have a good spot for our bowl top. So I'm going to take my knife and I'm going to come in and I'm going to follow the same angle that the clay is following here. I'm not going to go straight on because that will not leave me enough to attach this bottom on. So I've already got a natural divot here, so I'm going to follow that. I'm going to come in with the knife. I'm making contact with the jig. I'm keeping the clay nice and secure against the jig. My knife is staying at the same angle. I'm able to meet that on the other side. And now we've got a little bit of a better shot of what's going on. You will see some more separation from around the jig. Let me tip that so you can see right here a little bit. That's no big deal. You're just going to come in with your hands and we are going to make sure that we are nice and secure. These nesting projects are so quick and easy. I'm going to come and I'm going to treat the bottom side here, my seam there. It's really an easy way to make these sets and to make really interesting shapes in a way that you normally would not be able to do. Okay, so I'm going to give it one last spin. I like my angle here. If it was protruding a little bit too much, I would come in here and then you can now come around and you can really get that angle in just how you want it. Works just fine with my hands as well. Okay, so now our bottom is all set to go. We are going to flip this. You'll need an extra insert for this. It's just easier while the jig is in there. Make sure it's not stuck to your banding wheel. And then we're going to take this and we are going to flip. It's always better to do it really fast. All right. So now we've got a better shot of our top, and I'm just going to go around with my hands and I'm just going to make sure that I'm making contact all the way around the jig. Now, because we're squishing this clay, you'll be displacing your clay a little bit, and that's not a big deal because we're going to use our jig on this side too to make this top nice and even. So I'm supporting my clay and then I'm keeping my clay knife at the same angle. And if your jig shifts around a little bit, it's not a big deal. Just go ahead and seat it back in there. And then I'm going to go ahead and take care of my seam right here. And then we still have a lot of inside work to do with that seam. I've got a finishing sponge. While I'm out here, I'm just going to start softening up this lip. All right. And we are ready to remove our jig. I have no clay going up and in. My clay is nice and released. So now I'm going to take this and I'm just going to give it a twist and release. And it's really easy. So now I'm going to find out where my inner seam is right here. And as the clay is crossing over, I'm going to bring the clay from the higher side to the lower side, okay? So we're just blending this seam here. We want to lock that in nice and tight. We will always have access to this because it's a bowl, so it will be nice and wide open. But at this point, I just want to make sure that I'm really treating that seam well. I take a little bit of my vinegar, come in here. You will lose texture at the seam. It's just the nature. If you want to go ahead and stamp your texture in again, you can do that at this point, but I don't mind. I don't mind that it's a little smooth right where the seam is. Now, we have a treat here. We get to use our XXL, so 2XL rim cone, which is perfect for this size bowl. So I'm just going to put it in here, and I see a little bit of separation, so this gives me an idea of how round I am after that flip, and it looks pretty good. So I'm going to take this opportunity to just do a little work around the rim. We'll do some finishing work. This is where I need my banding bit. You can see my little guy sliding around there. Okay, so now it's time to put our bottom on. So we are going to grab another insert. I'm going to have to borrow from my friend over here. Just fine. Put that there. And we are going to need 2 inserts for this. So now we have our top and our bottom. I'm going to take it and flip it onto the rim cone. The rim cone is going to give us tension. It's going to keep our rim in check so it's nice and round. And then we can do we can add our foot on here. So I like to remove all the wear boards so I have access to my rim cone because that gives me a tiny banding wheel, which I will use while I'm attaching my bottom. I can see all the way in here, so if I see any light, any gaps, I can go ahead and take my hand and just kind of scoop that in. So now we've got our tiny, or our XXL rim cone, which is also serving as a banding wheel. I'm going to slip this. And we are going to still fake a foot, so we're going to pop in this foot. But you'll see, because of the size of this bottom, it will naturally sag in a little bit. So it gives us that natural foot. And then I'm going to go ahead and score this. It's really nice to just use the cutter that comes with the combo. Then you don't have to guess. There are some cutters that you can use for more than one jig. I'm working on getting those posted, some kind of chart for you, because it can be a lot to keep track of. So we'll want to, if you already have a cutter this size. So this cutter, I believe, is for our 6.5A or 6.5B. So if you already have that jig, then you already have this cutter size. I like to just keep, even if I use the same size for different projects, I always have a cutter for every jig, and then I don't have to keep track of what goes where. Okay, so now we've got our vinegar slip on there. Going to pop this on, and because this cutter is made for this size, we are almost spot on here. So I'm going to tack this down all the way around. Any extra clay hanging over we will take care of when we finish our foot. Now, I like this natural sag. I'm not going to counteract that. I like that's there. Now that we've got the bottom secure, and if you want to exaggerate that just a little bit more, you can just take our anvil. We use it on every bottom, and you can just pop that in a little bit more. So now we've got our bottom attached. I'm going to grab my rim cone like this, and we'll give it a flip. And because we kept tension on the rim while we were adding this bottom on, we did not lose our round for the bottom. So that puts a little pressure on there. So I'm just going to twist, release, and then I will set this back in. Now let's take care of our foot. We're almost done. This, like I said, these nesting projects are just they're really fast and really easy to do. So now I've got my banding bat attached. I'm going to put my project right in there. This is the Studio Pro 6-inch insert. Now, usually we use our mini shark fin foot tool, which is my favorite. But today we are going to use our regular shark fin, okay? This is the full size. We need more length to get in here. And with the mini shark fin, because of the belly of this bowl, it's a little harder to get in with feet. So now I'm gonna come in, and I'm actually gonna start with the back, the curved part here. And we are gonna start to go around, and we are going to seal up our foot, and we are going to remove a ton of extra weight from down here, okay? So every once in a while, I pull this up, and I remove whatever extra clay has built up on there. And then I'm going to use the flat side. Once I've got that seam nice and sealed, now I've got my big shark fin, which is our shaping rib number 10. You'll see this a lot. All my wheel work starts off with this shaping rib. So if you have not had a chance to work with this one yet, this is going to be a treat for you. All right, now remember, I'm just preliminarily laying in the groundwork for my foot. I'm removing a lot of extra weight down here, finishing my foot, and then I will lay in the groundwork for carving my foot there. We still have to address that bottom seam because we have attached our bottom. I'm going to just release this a little bit for you, bring you up just a touch, and I want to show you what this bottom would look like. Let's see if we can do something here. If you did not carve it, you would have a beautiful bottom there. And you would just take off any extra in your finishing stage. Okay, so that little skirt that you've lifted up, with the shark fin, that's just easy sponge work for that. Now I'm going to bring you over top. I'll show you what the inside looks like. So come on up and over with me. Beautiful, look at that, isn't that sweet? So we are able to keep our nice round shape with our XXL rim cone. Now we have this gap down here. We need to close this up, and that will finish our foot down there. So I am going to first take a rubber shaper, and I'm going to take some clay from the bowl, and I'm going to act like I'm adding a coil here. So I'm bringing clay from the bowl down, and I'm bringing it, and I'm making contact with that new foot that we put in, okay? So you're coming in, and you're just taking clay from the side, and you're bringing it and sealing that bottom portion on. This is a little different than our nesting mug. If you wanted to add a coil at this point, you absolutely could, but there's enough extra clay coming down from the wall where you can seal that in. Now I had to be really careful because I like my bottom is popped up because I faked my foot on the other side. So I don't want to interrupt that middle. I'm just looking to pick up that extra slip and to seal this bottom. So now that I have the clay, that extra clay brought from the side there, now I'm going to take my slippy brush that has the vinegar. I'm going to put just a little bit of water on that, and I'm going to take this and I'm going to really smooth this out. I will come back at leather hard and make sure that I don't have any sharp bits here. But at this point, your number one priority is sealing up this bottom, making sure that seam has no cracks, and you do not want to leave any standing moisture at this point, okay? We are smoothing and making sure that we're leaving it nice and dry. Any moisture down there will just introduce cracking, and you do not want that. If you feel like you've added a lot of slip, you can come in because it's a bowl. We have so much access to the bottom. And I take that, and we can go ahead and get that bottom all sealed up. Looks really good. And at this point, our last step would be to decide what we are going to do with our rim. Now, because it's a bowl, I want to leave this rim a little wider. I don't want to quite round it as much as I would a mug. You want your rims to be a little more robust, especially because people are going to be stacking these one inside of another. So if your rim gets too thin at this point, you're just going to have a higher likelihood of chipping or cracking when people are setting the bowl one inside of the other. So I'm just going to come through with my finishing sponge, and I'm going to treat this rim just a little bit. I will do more of this at leather hard, but I do want to make sure that I'm at least getting those really big burrs off of there. Now let's put in our XXL rim cone again. Okay, I'm just going to set it in. I'm not putting any pressure just yet. And wherever I'm seeing gapping, I can push down on the middle of the rim cone so it's making contact, and then I'm going to use my finger to bring it in, but we are looking really good. I don't see any major areas of gapping. And then while my rim cone is in, I take this opportunity to really do some work on the rim because I have that internal structure, that counter pressure there, so I'm able to do that. Anything that's disrupting in your texture pattern, wait till leather hard to do that. You just have less likelihood of messing up your form that way. So that is our regular nesting bowl. Look at that. It took me 24 minutes with narrating. And of course you have all your prep work. And then this little guy will nest right into its counterpart. And because we're using the same jig over and over and over, now I wouldn't normally do this when my clay is so fresh, but I just want you to see the function there. So that will nest in beautifully. I keep a couple rim cones in my studio, so each one of my bowls will have an XXL rim cone to call home, and I just keep these in there. I let them dry. You don't want to leave your rim cones in much longer than about an hour, okay? If you start leaving it longer, as your clay shrinks, it could crack, okay? Because this is not going to move with your clay. And then there we go. So there we have our regular, this is our regular nesting bowl, okay? And we have our XXL rim cone, and then we used for this bigger project our regular shark fin, and that's what you will need for this project. Please let me know if you have any questions, and I would love to see your finished bowls. So please tag us on Instagram or Facebook with your finished project. Thanks for stopping by.